All right, welcome to your Friday edition of the Ultimate Hockey Show. We are on Friday because we are talking about the Stanley Cup Finals. Sorry, some news just came in.
Yeah.
We'll talk about later on in the show. Good evening, everybody. Michael Gill alongside Rich Petty. Good evening, Rich. How are you?
Very good. How about you?
Good. Very excited for what should be a very great Stanley Cup final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers, which we'll talk about. We'll also wrap up the um, conference finals, and we will also wrap up and talk about some of the coaching changes, coaching hirings, if you will, in the NHL, as it is the offseason for 29 out of 31 teams in the National Hockey League, including a little bit of a tidbit that Paul Maurice interviewed Chris Knobloch uh, back when he was looking for a Jets assistant coach. Found that out the other day,
Yeah.
and he talked about it today at the media day. How he hired Jamie Compon over Chris Knobloch at the time. We'll give you Paul Maurice's reason later on in the show. So, Rich, it's hard to believe when I tell you the saying, and then there were two, but that's where we are. Starting tomorrow night, the Stanley Cup final from Amerant Bank Arena in Sunrise, Florida. How did we get here? Your thoughts? How we got, I guess, from 32 regular season teams to 16 playoff teams to two conference champions. One maybe a little bit of a surprise. The other, well, I think was picked by a lot of people, but just an opening thought on where we are and your reflections as 31, actually 30 teams, sorry, have already called it an off, called it a season and been in off-season mode.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts?
Well, just what, like on like that we're here now with these final two teams,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
mean?
just
Oh,
generally, but we're here. It's the Stanley Cup final, and
yeah.
tomorrow we get going.
Yeah. It's I would agree. It's been really good hockey up until now. I mean, there's a few games here and there that are kind of, there's always going to be, and with that many games, 8 series to start, and potentially 7 games in each series, and then getting down to 8, and then 4 teams, and now two. There's going to be a game here or there that's not fantastic, but for the most part, they've been really compelling, really good hockey. And I agree with you. I think Edmonton is the surprise. Edmonton's a good team. Don't get me wrong, but from where they were at the beginning of the season, where they were 3-9-1 after 13 games, and then fired their head coach, and what they've done since that time is pretty amazing. And also not having a sure idea of who their first or who their 1A netminder is. That's shocking, because they've gone through the ringer with netminders from Campbell to Skinner to who was the backup there?
Pittard.
Pickard, then back to Skinner, then back to Pickard, now back to Skinner again. Like it's yo-yo with their goalie, and they're still in the Stanley Cup final, which is incredible. Um, but and for me, Edmonton is a surprise, because I didn't think they would be good enough to handle. Well, for sure not at Dallas. I really thought it was going to be like, since the beginning of the playoffs, and I told you that it was. I thought it was going to be Florida and the Dallas, and I was off by 1 round in 1 game. So, but I still like Florida. I still think, in my mind, they are the favored team and the favorite. And I think they're the better team, but that doesn't mean Edmonton can't win. And I could be proven wrong, but I still think, and I picked New York in the last round only because you picked Florida, and I wanted to be completely different. And now there's no chance of me being able to catch you this year, but that's okay. I'll let you win this year so that you don't get completely saddened by the whole process year after year. If your co-host continuously won the hockey pool year after year after year, it would be very sad for you. It'd be very boring and very sad. And I don't want you to lose interest in hockey or in the show. So I will concede this year that you were better than me, and congratulations on that. But now we're in the final round here, and I'm going to look forward to it. It's really, for me, it's going to be very interesting because you've got a team that's known to play defensively tough, not much room in the ice. I mean, look what Florida did to the New York Rangers. I mean, the Rangers were the number one scoring team. They were the President's Trophy winner. They didn't lose a game until the second round of the playoffs. They were scoring at an unbelievable rate, 4 or 5 goals a game, whatever it was. And then they played Florida and they couldn't do anything. And they couldn't find ice and they couldn't find space in the front of the net. They couldn't make plays. They couldn't get through the neutral zone easy. They got hit everywhere they went and they got worn down. And they were so focused on playing the defense in their own zone, playing against the Panthers, that they didn't have enough energy then to turn around and play offense against Florida, who's already a very good defensive team to begin with, plus Bobrovsky. So now that same machine goes up against Edmonton. Edmonton, are they more skilled than the Rangers? I don't know. I think they have the same amount of offense. You could say maybe McDavid and Draisaitl are a little bit more high end than Zibanejad and Panarin, but I'm interested in seeing how the offense of the Oilers matches up against the defensive play and the hitting and the physicalness of the Panthers. And do the Panthers wear down the Oilers, or do the Oilers just have too much offense and too much power, especially on the power play, and overwhelm Florida on that? Can Florida kill penalties? That for me is the ultimate question. I'll put it back to you. But to me,
Yeah, yeah. To me, this Stanley Cup preview show, Stanley Cup final preview show, boiled down to that one question.
what?
Because Dallas didn't have an answer for the water power play once it caught coin.
And yet they are a very good penalty killing team.
Yeah,
So
and now the Oilers can't give up power play goal. It's 20-something kills in a row.
and the Oilers have played well defense. So, and that's the other surprise for me too, is how
Yeah,
well after the first round against LA, where they were exposed, especially Cece and Nurse were exposed horribly, and they were like -5 or -7 in that series, even though the Oilers won. But they were terrible, and how they've cleaned up their game. And now the Oilers, like you say, have killed off 22 or 24 penalties in a row. They play well defensively. They could play physical. They could kill penalty. It's going to be it's a really interesting matchup. Can McDavid make magic 5-on-5? And if he can't, can the Oilers still make enough magic with the man advantage to score enough goals to beat Florida, who's going to score on even strength? So that's it in a nutshell. And can Skinner play the same way against Florida as he did against the Stars? Because Bobrovsky right now is playing amazing. So Skinner had better match that. Otherwise, the Oilers are going to be in trouble very quickly. So
key players would need to show up for their team. Rob says. I don't know if you can see this comment.
Yep.
Barcroft for Florida, Kane for the Oilers.
Okay. Is Kane healthy? He was out the last game. He got injured. So
He don't play, but he's not healthy. Multiple sources have told me that Evander Kane is playing with something that's defined as a sports hernia.
okay. Yeah, because he didn't play the last period or the last half of the last period in the last
No,
game. So
no, and apparently he's been getting injections for months just to be able to play. So,
I mean, for me, I understand what what the comment means, but to
yeah,
me, I think Barkov is more important to Florida than Kane is to the Oilers. So I guess they're a key player, maybe, but to me, Barkov is the number one center. He plays well defensively. He kills penalties.
yeah,
He's on the power play. He's great in the faceoff circle. He's great defensively in his own zone. He's big. He makes space for his teammates. He's not flashy. He's not like Draisaitl or McDavid, but he's a very good hockey player. And to me, I just think he's more valuable to Florida than Kane is to the Oilers, because I think, in my mind, the Oilers can still win without Kane healthy
Right.
or even in the lineup. To me, I don't know how well the Florida Panthers do against the Oilers without Barkov in the lineup. But yeah,
Yeah. No. No. I would 100% agree.
yeah.
Robin said the Panthers definitely hold the edge in goaltending with Bobrovsky over the Oilers. Skinner, I'm not so sure. When you're here for a reason. Y- yes, I would give Bobrovsky the edge, but just like this, what am I holding up?
I can't see
Piece
it,
of
but
paper.
yeah.
Piece of paper.
Oh,
On a
just a
piece
sheet.
of paper, Bobrovsky might be the better goalie. Let's play this game on the ice starting tomorrow night. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, it, we just talked about it, and that's the part that makes me really kind of irritated. All the series have been over since Monday, yet we're waiting for Saturday to play hockey. It's just annoying. Um, but anyway, that's besides the point. I'm not gonna bash TV scheduling because it makes no sense at the best of times. But that being said, um, where does Dallas go from here? Because to me, if this is their best chance, in that Pavelski, Ben, Sagan era, which is kind of that older side, mixed in with the younger guys like the Hastings, the Robertsons of the world, the Wyatt Johnsons of the world.
Yeah.
Where does Dallas go from here? Because to me, and the reason I was so dead set on Dallas winning the West right from the beginning is it looked like they had the best mix as far as old and youth, and you made the money work in the cap, scenario. You have that mix of you're not too young, but you're not too old. But to me, yet it seemed like the Pavelskis and the Bens and the Sadins of the world are the reason that Florida didn't, or Florida, sorry, that Dallas didn't win this series. And, Ben to me was like MIA in particularly game five and game six. Pavelski was quiet. Um, now we hear he's, you know, considering retirement. Um,
Hang on.
the
I've got this
Dallas,
in the background. Can you close the door?
the
Can
Dallas,
you close this
the
door?
Dallas depth that everybody thought they would have. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, but is Ben like Ben is not the guy from 10 years ago, right? Like Ben used to be him and Sagan used to play on the first line together. They were 1A and 1B. They were the drivers of that team. They played on the first power play. They played on the first line. They played 20 plus minutes a game. Like you, but they're not those guys anymore. They're
Right.
they're they're old. They're in their mid 30s. So now that ice time is eaten up by guys like Rupe Hintz and by Robertson and by um,
Wyatt Johnson.
Wyatt Johnson. So I'm just saying, but that's not to say that having veteran players like that is not great on your second and third line. So I think
Right.
Ben and Sagan are still good players. They still helped. You know, I think it was for Dallas. Honestly, I think that's two things. Tanev got hurt, which was a big deal. I think he was playing injured, and they also missed their other really big defenseman who hasn't played like for half the year now in Hakanpää. Hakanpää was missing. He's like 6'5", 250 pounds. He's a big monster. Like that team was missing him, and I just think they they could not score enough when they needed to, and you got to give credit to the Oilers, and they couldn't stop the Oilers on the power play. If just like kept the Oilers back, allowing them only one goal a game, those last two games, game 5 and game 6, they
Hmm.
allowed the Oilers to score in each of those two games 2 power play goals. If they let him only score 1 power play goal, then that game is tied, right? So and going late into the game, so it's just tough. I don't think they need to blow everything up. I think the
No.
Stars are a good team. Like the Jets, there's no way they win. Well, I should say no way. They're going to have just as much trouble next year trying to get in the playoffs because there's Colorado, who's still very good.
Right.
There's the Dallas Stars, who are very good. So,
It,
but
oh,
only a pair of teams can make the Stanley Cup final. What's that?
it just goes to show, Red, that when you get to something like the conference final, there's no guarantee you're going to be back here next year or the year after or the year after.
Right.
Just take the Winnipeg Jets as an example. I mean, what Tampa's done is like the outlier, 2 straight Stanley Cups and a Stanley Cup final. And now, the East has gone to Florida to the state of Florida the last 5 years. But, to me, just because you get to the top of the mountain or near the top of the mountain doesn't mean you're going to be at the top of the mountain year after year after year after year. So it's a missed opportunity for Dallas, and they're going to have to start at the same level as everybody else in October next year. And, everybody thought, oh, this will be the start for the Winnipeg Jets in 18, 19, they'll be back there. 20, they'll be back there. This will be the start of a dynasty. Well, it's a team that hasn't been able to get out of the second round since then. Maybe the closest chance came in the All Canadian division, but they got swept away by the Canadians. So just because you're here now does not mean you're going to be there next year. And I think that's a really interesting point that we need to kind of talk about here. And maybe we're not giving the Oilers enough credit. They're banging on the door, second conference final in 3 years. There's something to be said about, you need to learn to walk before you can learn to run kind of thing, right? And I think this is McDavid's best shot at a Stanley Cup right here, if you want to talk about opportunity. Because there's no guarantee this team, actually, in fact, we know this, Rick. The Oilers will not look the same this fall as they do right now. It's just part of sport. It's part of what's called the salary cap. It demands change, whether you like it or not. Um, this is what Florida's been able to do 2 years in a row. Not normal. And did they learn something last year? But maybe they're fortunate enough through hard work to be back here to maybe, right or wrong for last year, right? So one of these two teams is going to be bitterly disappointed. Whoever loses it, and there's no guarantee they're going to be back next year. But I think this is McDavid's best chance for a Stanley Cup here. Speaking of opportunity, and 2 years ago it didn't work because of uh, Colorado. Last year it didn't work because they lost to Vegas, and Vegas won the Stanley Cup, right? So you're here now. Doesn't mean you're going to be back here next year, the year after, the year after, the year after. And I think that is what's going to be so disappointing for the Dallas Stars, is that this was the best version of the Dallas Stars to get over the hump. That was my long-winded answer of it's disappointing, but you made the Final Four, and you didn't make the Final Two, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. But I would argue this though is that I think the window or how I'm going to say it, the opportunity is more prime for Edmonton over the next 5 years to whether they win this year or not. If they win this year, to repeat and win again, to get back to
Yep.
second, because McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, you go down that list of all their players on
Evan Bouchard, where did that guy come from?
Evan Bouchard, Nurse, Ekholm, Skinner. Like they're not old. They're all in
No,
their mid to
no,
late 20s. And so they're primed to win again for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Like they're not old. I don't know how much
right?
of a cap issue there is. Every team has to go through some changes year over year. But I just think Oilers are more primed. Whereas I agree with you about the Stars. They're going to have to figure out how to do things. And I know one of the comments came through. I didn't hear that Pavelski announced his retirement. Is that what he did after the game?
No, no, he didn't. He said, "I'm thinking about retiring."
I know
But
that Zach Parise retired from the Avalanche because this was
yes,
for sure
yes,
his only
yeah,
thing.
no. So he said
Yeah.
he was leaning toward retirement, but didn't want to say anything in the moment. So people took that to me that he was retiring that day. He did not outright come out and say, "I'm retiring." So again, it's a guy that had an opportunity, lost an opportunity with a very good player. I remember Ferrauti in San Jose, and everybody thought he would leave in San Jose, and ooh, he's not going to be very good anymore. Well, I'll tell you what, he made himself quite a career on those short-term deals after leaving the Sharks.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. Um, Now the biggest thing to me, Rich, is how you can get into Game Three of Dallas Edmonton, and Dallas being up 2-1 in the series and 2-0 in the game, and next thing you know, you shake it up, and boy, you lost control of the series, but as much as you thought you had control, because it's like Edmonton took control right from there. And I think that was the most shocking part. They came back, they tied the series at 2, they won the Friday night in Dallas, and then whew, at Palooza, it was their game 6 in Edmonton. Um, Boy, because I'm telling you, if that goes 7, Edmonton's not winning that game. Peter DeBoer 7-0 in Game Sevens, which is just unbelievable. Yeah, it's just the way it goes, and I agree with you. I think losing Hartenpah, maybe most importantly Chris Tanev, because you look at Tanev's analytics with goals, goals for, goals allowed when he's on the ice, and opportunities for and against. Chris Tanev is a shutdown D and would be priority number one for me to resign in Dallas. Whether that happens, I guess remains to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. I don't know what their salary cap issues are. That's a very good question. But yeah, well, and they got to get Hack and Paw healthy again. Listen, I'm not gonna. Edmonton's a good team. That series was tied, like was matched up very evenly, and
Yep.
it could have gone the other way just as easily. But I just thought Edmonton just had a little bit more, and yeah, and they were able to do it, and they were able to overcome, and that's really good. And I don't know, I I just think the Oilers are poised to do more longer term with the team that they have. Whereas, and I don't think that Edmonton has as many questions as Dallas does. I think Dallas has a lot more questions. So
Well, and I think to be fair, a team like Colorado didn't have something to say next year. Colorado didn't be back and have something to say. Vegas didn't be back and have something to say. And I think in the East, much the same way, Boston didn't have something to say.
yeah,
Rangers will be back, probably more miserable than ever, assuming they can get their goalie under contract. Shesterkin, who apparently wants $12 million, which is absolutely absurd. Um, to me, that would be a non-starter, but that can be done. Um, what do you see about Florida? Because it seemed like teams are able to play with Florida for a time, and then they just crank it up to a level that nobody seems to be able to catch up to right now with the physicality, the goal scoring, the hits, the goaltending. Are we not giving Florida enough credit for what they've done?
you know what? I would agree, maybe that's also partially because we live in Canada, right? And all I'm hearing endlessly is Oilers this and Oilers that, and McDavid this and McDavid that, and everybody in Canada is picking the Oilers to win. Go ahead. And here's another thing. I had this debate with my significant other. She says, "Aren't you going to cheer for Oilers?" I said, why would I cheer for the Oilers?
So
That's
you're already giving your pet away, huh?
why would anybody from Winnipeg cheer for Edmonton Oilers? She goes, well, they're the only remaining Canadian team. I said, I'm not cheering for a city or I'm not cheering for the Oilers. First of all, anybody who has any knowledge of history knows that the Oilers are the proverbial thorn in the foot of the Jets organization 1.0 and 2.0 for the last 40 years. Not in the WHA, but from the time they came into the NHL moving forward. I hate the Oilers. I've always hated the Oilers. I hated the Oilers when there were no Jets. So you say, you're going to cheer for the Oilers? No. I'm not going to cheer for the Oilers. And if you say, oh, but it's the only Canadian team, they've got as many Canadians on them as
Yeah, 22
Florida
of them, in
does.
fact.
Or if you're cheering for Canadians, maybe you should cheer for Florida because Canada or because Florida has more Canadians. They've all got a mix of Americans, Canadians, Europeans,
Oilers
Russians.
have 22 Canadians on their roster.
Yeah. They have what? Sorry?
22 Canadians on their roster.
Yeah, they do?
Yep.
Drysaddle's not a Canadian.
He's a German.
Yeah. So how can they have
22 out of 27 on their roster are Canadian.
You know that for a fact? You
I know
looked
that
that
for
up?
a fact.
Ugh. Okay.
I know that for
Well,
a fact.
well, even that being said, I don't cheer for a team because they're in Canada. I don't cheer for a jersey. I cheer for the team. My team
Would,
is not in the Stanley Cup Finals.
okay, so
I don't cheer.
would
I
you
cheer for who I like to cheer for.
would you be saying that about the Oilers if you weren't a Jets fan and didn't have all those bad experiences? Most notably, the 3-1 blown lead in the playoffs.
I don't know. I don't know. Would I be a Jets fan if I lived in Toronto? Probably not. I probably would be sipping the Kool-Aid and I'd be a Leafs fan. So I don't know. I'm just telling you, I can't stand the Oilers. I'm not cheering for the Oilers. I'm not picking the Oilers. If the Oilers win, I'll tip my hat, but I'm not involved. I'm not jumping on the bandwagon. I don't like the Oilers, and that's that. So I don't like, and I don't like them for a lot of reasons. I don't like them because it's Edmonton, City of Champions. You know, that's what they call themselves. That makes me want to throw up. I can sort of get a dry heat. City of Champions, like we're great. Look how great we are. We're the City of Champions. Number one. Number two, I don't like them because they have Evander Kane. Number three, I don't like them because they have Corey Perry. So there's three reasons right there, pretty good ones, that you shouldn't cheer for the Oilers if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan.
Sorry, I'm sitting here waiting for you to change my mind, but it hasn't happened.
That's fine. That'll
Anyway, since we're here
it'll
already,
make for an interesting final pick for you and I.
So do you want to make the final pick right now and then talk about things going on around the league?
Sure.
Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
Go ahead, you go.
The top is coming north. Oilers in 6.
Okay. Well,
Florida will not stay out of the penalty box, and the Oilers power play will eat them alive. Oilers in 6.
Okay. I predict Florida in 7. So there you go.
That is our Stanley
I would
Cup.
even say Florida in 6, but I'm going to say Florida. So
it's going to be won on home ice by somebody according to us. So it'll probably be a 4 or 5 game series, as we said so. Anyway, that being said, the Toronto Maple Leafs hired Lane Lambert as an associate coach to Craig Berube this week. Yep. Your thoughts?
Listen, it's what is it like we said before? It's sort of the NHL coaching carousel. It's not as bad as the CFL. In the CFL, it's even worse. It's the same guys that just get respun and respun over and over again. In the NHL, you can get something refreshing and new, like Chris Knobloch in Edmonton. But in this case, Lane Lambert, he coached the Islanders, did he not? He was the Islanders
Lane Lambert?
I believe.
Yeah, you're right. He did.
Yeah,
he did.
So
he was the one that was
a good NHL coach.
He was the one that was relieved of his duties and replaced by Patrick Waugh.
Patrick, there you go. Yep. So
So here's an interesting part. Did we talk about Berube to Toronto on the last show?
I think we did. Yes.
This is
Yes, we did.
interesting, right? Because somebody said to me, you know, I don't believe it was Rob, because him and I talk quite often about different stuff. But he says, Mike, or this person told me, Mike, would Craig Berube be regarded in the same way if he didn't win a Stanley Cup? And to be honest, I had to think about it, right? Because Berube got replaced. Berube came in. Um, he replaced whoever the coach was in St. Louis. Might have been Mike Yeo, actually. Um, who's going to be in Toronto? I think it to be Yo and um, Oh no, sorry, Yo's going to Vancouver to be with Baumgartner as well. We'll get to that in just a minute with Travis Green. Um, but would Craig Berube be held in the same regard if he hadn't won a Stanley Cup? Because the results outside of Craig Berube winning the Stanley Cup would look on paper to be mediocre. But to which I would argue, Craig Berube's teams have always played the way you need to play to win a Stanley Cup. So I think to judge it on one sort of Stanley Cup coming in, winning the Stanley Cup, and the rest of it not happening. The
Yeah.
Blues had good teams through the Berube era that
Yeah.
were always competitive every year. So I
Correct.
don't quite buy the math of, would Craig Berube be different if he hadn't won a Stanley Cup? Would he be in such high regard? Coaches are in high regard not because they won a Stanley Cup, but because of their style of play, I'm trying to say. So, Craig Berube, to me, full accolades, deserves everything he's had coming
Yeah.
his way, and his teams always play the right way. And to
Yeah.
be honest, it fits a Brad Treliving style of play. This has nothing to do with the Stanley Cup.
No,
Craig
I agree.
Berube, sorry?
No, I agree. Yeah.
Craig Berube is coming to Toronto because Brad Treliving wants to play Brad Treliving's way, and Craig Berube is the best coach to bring out the Brad Treliving style of play. So this notion out there that Craig Berube is only a household coaching name because of the Stanley Cup, to me is a very weak point, is what I'm
I
trying to say.
agree. And here's the thing you also have to remember. That team, St. Louis, was terrible at the beginning of that year. They fired the coach.
Underachieving.
Yeah. And then Berube came in and he switched goaltenders. He brought in the Binnington from the minors, and it just completely 180'd. And to me, I agree with you. Yeah, he won a Stanley Cup, and that's a feather in his cap, and that's certainly something he could put on every resume when he goes and applies for a job. But I agree with Craig Berube. You look at that team in St. Louis, they were, if you think back to all the teams that have won the Stanley Cup, let's say in the last, what is that, maybe like 10 years, not 9 or 10 years. When did they win? When was that? Was that 2019 or 2020?
Yeah, it was the year after the Jets, and the Jets lost to them
Yes.
in the first round.
Okay, yeah. So it was 2019. So in the last 5, 6, 7 years, they are the team that is probably the most, say, average, the most like they had no superstars in that team. You could argue Ryan O'Reilly. Okay, but Ryan O'Reilly's not a superstar. He's a very good player, but he's
Yeah,
not a superstar. He's not a
yeah.
McDavid Draisaitl. He's not a Mark Stone, um, uh, Jack Eichel. He's not a, for Vegas. He's not a Alex Ovechkin, uh, Marcus Backstrom for the Capitals. Like I'm just saying that team won, and they won because they played well defensively. They had even scoring. They killed penalties well. They scored the occasional power play goal. Their net minding was fantastic, and they ground out a lot of close games, and they won close games, and they played tough, physical defensive hockey. But and that to me tells me it's on the coach, because lots of teams with that talent or with that sort of band of players would not be able to get that team to the Stanley Cup Finals. Anybody can, I should say, anybody. You can win a lot of games with McDavid and Draisaitl, or Panarin and Zibanejad, or whoever you put your pairing of players. But to win with that St. Louis team back in 2019, considering where they were to start the season and where they ended up, that's Berube. A huge chunk of it is Berube. So to me, I think he earns everything he gets in terms of his chance to coach in Toronto. But it's going to be interesting. What does Toronto look like? Do they play that same willy-nilly, no defense style? Like, Craig Berube can bring in his coaching, but the players still got to buy in. And there still has to be guys there, maybe not the superstars, but the other guys, the role players, the add-ons, they got to be better. They got to upgrade their talent on their defensive side. They've got to upgrade the talent on the third and fourth line. They've got to figure out who's their number one goalie. Those are a lot of important questions that I don't know that Craig Berube is the one to fix all that. That's more on Brad Treliving. But I give him credit for hiring a guy like Craig Berube, who's completely different from Sheldon Keefe, completely, in terms of how they coach. So
We have some breaking news out of
what's
Major League Baseball, but it's pretty significant. I hate to break in over
that?
here in the middle of a hockey show. The Calvin Biggio era is over in Toronto. The Toronto Blue Jays have designated Calvin Biggio for assignment and called up Spencer Horwitz.
Well, not, I wouldn't say it's over with Kevin Biggio. He's played well, but Spencer Horowitz has been tearing it up in
Yeah,
AAA. He's the best
yeah,
player. So they have to
yeah.
move
So
somebody down. But that doesn't mean Kevin Biggio's done with the Blue Jays.
yeah, he is. He's done. He's designated for assignment. He's going on waivers. He
Really?
ref-
That's what it is?
as a 5-year plus veteran of Major League Baseball, Horwitz has the right to refuse an assignment to the minors and ask to be designated for assignment and placed on waivers. Calvin
Horowitz?
Biggio has been asked to be placed on waivers.
You're talking Biggio now, not Horowitz. You
Yeah,
just,
Biggio, yeah.
okay.
So the Biggio era is over in Toronto.
So you
It's
think he's going
interesting.
to be grabbed by somebody? He'll for
He'll
sure
he'll,
get.
he'll get picked up.
Yeah.
That's why he knows that. That's why he does that. But yeah, I know this is a hockey show. Just wanted to mention that because that is a significant piece of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Well, I wouldn't say
But
it's
but to be
significant.
fair, he
It's
hasn't been playing like that
significant. He'd be
lately.
playing every day. How can you say he's significant? He doesn't play every
Well,
day.
he was until he lost his job recently. So
No, he hasn't been hitting well enough. When he hits, when he makes a hit, it's a beautiful hit.
yeah,
But he only pulls the ball. He,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
you gotta. I'm interested in seeing what Horowitz can do. He was tearing up AAA. They were saying not just because he's in the Blue Jay system, but I was reading a
yeah.
whole bunch of stuff on Major League Ball over the last few weeks, and they said he is the very best, one of the very best players in AAA that's not playing in the majors as of right now and should be. So
It's interesting. Anyway, back to hockey. The other news quickly. Travis Green has hired Nolan Baumgartner and Mike Yeo. Sorry, the two biggest names as assistants on the Travis Green staff in Ottawa. Rick, what do you think of the hiring of Travis Green for Ottawa? Now, he was the interim coach in New Jersey after the firing of Lindy Ruff, was not retained, finished out the year, and is now the head coach in Ottawa. I don't think we really talked about this. What do you think of the whole Travis Green to Ottawa, and then he brings in Mike Yeo and a guy that he's very familiar with from the Manitoba Moose and Nolan Baumgartner?
I think, listen, again, Travis Green is a good coach. He was in Vancouver. The players liked playing for him. They had success. But sometimes, it goes from did Travis Green come after Bruce Boudreau or before?
Sorry?
Did Travis Green come after Bruce Boudreau or before in Vancouver?
Before.
It was before. So it was Green, then Boudreau for a short period, and now Rick Tocchet. Okay.
Yep.
Well, Travis Green is a good coach. Listen, uh, I'm not shocked at all that the Senators got him. Senators are a team on the verge. We've said this now for how many years? It's the same as the Sabres. They got so many young players. Now it's time for them to put up. We got to shut up, and the Senators and the Sabres got to start putting up. You got all these talented young players in their early to mid 20s. Let's go. Let's let's accomplish something. And I think Travis Green is a good coach. Um, I think he will make things happen in Ottawa. I don't know if he's going to be there long term until the point that they actually achieve success and continued success for a while, but he's a good coach. And bringing on Nolan Baumgartner and Mike Yeo, yeah, I'm happy for Nolan Baumgartner. He was a good hockey player for the Moose. He's a good guy. Now he's got a chance to be an assistant coach in Ottawa.
Yeah, he was an assistant with Travis Green in Vancouver and then spent the last 2 years with the Moose. So he left the Moose now to go to Ottawa. So the other interesting thing is Strutter Neal has not announced assistant coaches as of yet. Nolan Baumgartner was fought to be a candidate for head coach Strutter Neal with the Jets. There is no news on the assistant coaching, if you will. Go ahead.
No, but I thought they are going to. No, there is news that they're going to retain Wade Flaherty for
Yeah,
goaltender.
we talked about this already. They're
Right.
retaining Marty Johnston and Wade Flaherty, looking for two new assistants. So
To replace who? Lauer and
Lauer and then Strutter Neal's old job.
right.
So to me, with that, I wouldn't be surprised if Dave Hatstall ends up in one of those jobs. That
You
was a
think so?
name bandied. That was a name bandied about to me by several people in the know. How highly regarded Dave Hatstall is. He's got somewhat connections to Winnipeg with his connections to UND, because he was the former coach at UND before going to Philadelphia, um, and subsequently to Toronto, and then subsequently to Seattle. The other thing is Seattle. Speaking of Seattle, hired Dan Ballesma, who
Yeah.
has been out of the league for a while. Now finds his way back in. He's currently coaching Coachella Valley in the AHL's Western Conference Final. They have a 3-1 series lead heading into Game 5. Don Bauersma best known for, I think, the back-to-back Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh with the Penguins. But he's kind of been a forgotten member of that coaching fraternity, if you will. Because he seemingly was in the American Hockey League with Coachella Valley and not really discussed, despite losing their cup last year in Game 7 in overtime. Seemingly has them going back to the Calder Cup this year as well, assuming they can close out the series. Are you surprised Dan Bauersma in Seattle? Or does this make sense with your AHL affiliate having so much success? Presumably, a lot of your AHL guys are going to come play for you. With the big club eventually, maybe most notably Shane Wright among others. Does this make sense for Seattle as much as the rest of hockey seemingly has forgotten about Dan Ballesma?
Yeah, no, he's a good coach. Like you win a Stanley Cup, he's a good coach. But sometimes players get, or I should say players, but also coaches, let's say you get jammed, but you win two Stanley Cups, then something goes sideways in with the Penguins, he gets fired. Then he floated around. He was out west, wasn't he, with San Jose or Anaheim? And then he was here and there,
Great
and then he
time,
was
yeah.
and then he was assistant coach for
Yep.
here and assistant coach for there, and you're just biding you're just biding your time. You only got 32 head coaching jobs in the NHL.
Yep.
It's not You know what I mean? So just because you're a head coach in one team and even won a Stanley Cup, that doesn't mean everybody's working to have you be their head coach again right afterwards, right? You got to earn your way back maybe a little bit, and then the young guys come up. There's all these things that can happen, right? Like there is now.
Right.
You bring in a guy like Chris Knobloch, and now that's one less job for one of the old timers head
Right.
coaches to find a spot, right? Mind you,
Right.
now Rick Bonus has retired, so that's opened up a spot. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, um, he's a good coach too. He's just like Travis Green. He's gonna like he was someplace it didn't work out. He goes somewhere else. Look at Paul Maurice. Paul Maurice is a good coach. He was with Toronto. Then he gets sacked. He's on the television on TSN, and the Jets call him. He comes to the Jets, and he takes a very young, average team, and he brings them to the Stanley Cup semifinals and into the playoffs a bunch of years. And then it runs its course. So is now he goes from being a great coach now to being terrible. Then he goes to Florida, and he takes Florida, who hadn't been to the Stanley Cup final. He's brought him there the last 2 years. So now he's a great coach again. I mean, it's I don't know. Only one team can win the Stanley Cup final or the Stanley Cup, and just because you don't win the Stanley Cup, that doesn't mean you go from being a fantastic coach to being chopped liver. So
I have a question, Rich, and this might come out very bad, so bear with me. And it's in regards to what you just said about Paul Maurice. He doesn't have it. The message gets old, whatever you want to call it in Winnipeg, so he resigns. He goes to Florida and has success in Florida, but wasn't necessarily found in Winnipeg, at least to the way we expected it.
yeah,
How does a coach go from being his voice getting too old? No, voice getting too old. The message getting too old to going somewhere else, the message being well received, and you having success. And I'm not just equating this to Paul Maurice. It seems like different coaches go to different places. They struggle, then they find it. Then they struggle, then they find it again. It's like a cycle. Like, does my question make sense of like how is the coach able to go from a they hire you to fire you mentality to it not going very well to now being in Paul Maurice's shoes where you're starting your second consecutive Stanley Cup final tomorrow. Like, and that's not, 5 or 10 years between opportunities. We're talking about he got hired the next year to Florida, took them right to the cup, again. Now we'll see if they win it. Winning it, obviously, is a different, scenario than going to the final, obviously. But how are coaches able to sort of rinse and repeat so quickly
yeah.
and get their message to resonate with a new group of people?
Well, I don't
Like,
think
does my question make sense?
not really, but that's okay. I think I know what you're trying to ask. His message doesn't change. It's the audience that changes. It's like if you're an actor and you do the same play over and over again for the same audience. After about like for me personally, after seeing the same play for 10, 12 nights in a row, I'm probably well, I'm not even gonna be after the first, second night, maybe I'll watch it once, I'll watch a second. I'm not gonna watch the same play or listen to the same play day after day, week after week. Well, that's what players have to do with coaches. It's the same thing. So eventually it's the coach's style, it's his whatever. And Paul Maurice is being gracious. He's not saying I can't win with these guys, but that could be part of it too. Maybe he realizes Wheeler is on the downside. He was a big driver. He's now getting old. I can't
Mhm.
get Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele to play the way that they should. I've lost all the big defensemen that used to be here because Ben Sherratt and Bufflin and Truba and Myers aren't
Myers.
here anymore, and Kulikov, they're all gone. I got all these other guys, but besides Morrissey, I don't know that I can get to where a team could go with these guys. Because now he's not going to say that. He's not going to say that to the
Right.
general manager, but maybe in the back of his mind, he just says, I need something fresh. I need to walk away. So he walks away. But his message when he goes to Florida is not going to be any different than what it was in Winnipeg. In fact, if you looked, Jamie Compon is now the assistant coach with the Panthers after he was
Yep.
with Winnipeg. He walked away at the same time as Maurice did. So I, I don't know. That to me, it's you're overthinking. It's coaches are hired to be fired. And general managers are not going to fire themselves. So if they put a team together and they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and it's not, and the coach can't do anything with it, they're going to fire the coach. They're not going to fire themselves, even though they probably should in a lot of cases. But that being said, that's the way it is. What I'm interested in, you're talking about the latest. I just got the latest. The rock star Drake, it's just been put out. He put out a $500,000 bet on the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. So I don't know if that makes your choice of the Oilers winning in 6 any more or less important or prominent. But Drake pushed $500,000 on the Oilers to win. Unbelievable.
Well, every Canadian team that's made this Stanley Cup final since '93 has lost in 6 or 7 games. Most notably, Calgary losing in 7 to Tampa, Edmonton losing in 7 to Carolina, Vancouver losing in 7 to Boston.
Yeah.
Ottawa lost in 5 to Anaheim. Montreal lost in 5 to Tampa. It's interesting to say the least. Just as we wrap up the show, we're going to wrap up a little bit early because it is Friday. It is Friday, and we have places to be. Give me one final thought on the Stanley Cup final. We plan to be back next Thursday at 5 o'clock, although we'll verify that in advance of Game 3 at Rogers Place in Edmonton. What are you looking for in these first 2 games?
Well, I'm looking to see. I mean, we hit on it earlier. I'm looking to see. To your point, because actually you made a really good point at the beginning. Can Florida play tough, but not too tough that they draw penalties and put the Oilers in an advantageous position to win? Because I agree with you. To me, just in general, I don't think the Oilers can win. Like if this series is all 5-on-5, like hypothetically, if there's never a penalty called in all the games in the series, whether it goes 4 games or 7 or anything in between, if there's no penalties called, in my mind, Florida is the better team 5-on-5, and will wear down the Oilers with their physical play and their defensive play over the course of that game. Where here's the difference though is that the Oilers will get power plays. Can Florida stem the tide and keep Edmonton from scoring power play goals? Because if they can, then to me, I think the defensive play and the physicality of the Panthers will wear down the Oilers. And I especially think the forecheck that the Panthers present, especially on their second and third lines that push around the defensive pairings of other teams like they did to the Rangers, they're going to do that all over. Who's the second and third pairing of the defensemen? It would be Nurse and Cece, and then it would be the third pairing is Desjardins and who's in the third pairing for the Oilers? It's
Desjardins and Kulak, maybe when he plays.
And Kulak. Okay. So I just think they're going to get exposed at certain times, worn down by the way that Florida forechecks and the way that they put pressure on the puck. And even if it's only a mistake here and there, whatever, that might be the difference in the game. But again, if Florida takes penalties and the Oilers score on the power play, it changes the whole game. Like Florida, and that's the crazy thing about special teams, Florida can outplay the Oilers for 55, 54 minutes of a game, But if they give them 3 power plays and they let the Oilers score 2 out of 3 power plays, they get a pair of goals. Florida can't score more than one. They lose 2-1.
Oh no, sorry. The pairs are as follows. Today, Antoine Bouchard, Nurse Cece, Philip Robert, and Brett Kulak
Oh,
on
was
the third pair.
Goldberg?
So you're talking about Robert and Kulak.
Well, maybe Desjardins is injured then. It must
Yeah,
be.
no,
He's
they
not
took them
skating.
out of game 6. It was
Really?
Robert that came in game 5, yeah.
No.
Because he got the big goal in game 5, the 3-1 goal, sorry, in game 6. So,
And if they win with him in the lineup the last 2 games, why would they change that up, right? So
correct.
makes
Yeah,
sense. Okay. So we're almost at the top of the hour. So
we
you've
are.
got Edmonton in 6. I've got Florida in 7. I agree. There's going to be somebody winning, or at least we're predicting somebody's going to win on home ice. I might have even said Florida in 5. I might be crazy. I could be completely wrong. I could, it's so funny. I thought I knew hockey, and then of course, then it was played, and then we saw how it all played out.
Yeah,
It
no,
could
I
go,
was thinking. I was
yeah.
thinking about you in the final minute of game 6.
It
Edmonton.
could happen in this thing too. Florida's the better team all around in terms of their depth and in terms of their style of play and what they do.
Yeah,
They're a better team. But Oilers have superstars, 2 big superstars, and Oilers have an unbelievable power play. And now their penalty killing is just out of this world. And Stuart Skinner, who struggled all year, now is playing like he's rediscovered his inner George Vezina. So I
yeah.
don't know what's going on, but yeah.
Well, it's weird how just to quickly touch on it to the. I know we let it go.
Yeah.
Uh, it's interesting how a goalie can get pulled in the biggest games and the biggest thing, and that be like a mental reset. And now they come back, and it's like, oh, it's almost like they got embarrassed by being pulled,
Yeah.
and now they look like Patrick Waugh after that, right? So it's interesting. But anyway, we'll see you next Thursday and not the game 3. For Rick Petty, I'm Michael Justin. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup Finals. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.